So I'm going to talk today about the new lab that we've set up at Rice called the Cognitive Human-Robot Partnership Lab. And this is actually the first time that I'm saying that out loud in front of an audience. You can call it the CHRP or the CHIRP lab, depending on how you're feeling. So the research that we do focuses on leveraging partnerships between humans and robots, these physical interactions that we can now have with safer, better sensing and better controlled robotic systems for improving human quality of life. Some examples of physical human-robot interaction that exist right now in the world, specifically wearable devices, include devices like the Harmony exoskeleton, which is an upper limb rehabilitation robot that I did my Ph.D. research with, similar lower limb and back exoskeletons, which are for assisting or rehabilitating gait or helping warehouse workers as they're picking up heavy boxes and moving them. Robotic prostheses, so developing automated or semi-automated prosthetic systems that humans can use after amputation. As well as on the other end of this spectrum, we have surgical robotics, where we still have a really strong physical interaction between this robotic system that is not very automated, but is directly controlled by a human surgeon. The spectrum that we've covered here goes all the way from robots that are doing all of the work to humans that are doing all of the work with a robot, right? And there is that spectrum still needs to be explored in the sense that we're not really leveraging all of those capabilities on the human and the robot side. So let me explain what I mean by that. On the human side of that spectrum, we have some very unique capabilities. We're really versatile. We have, so I can interact with a bunch of different things. Okay, that changed. That was weird. But we're really versatile. We have a lot of great intuition because of our lived experiences. We have experience of interacting with different types of objects, and so we can draw on that experience. We're also highly teachable. You can give me a new type of interaction modality, and I can just click around on it and figure out how to use it. This is complementary to the kind of abilities that robots have. In the sense that robots have really good sensing abilities. They can have really good vision sensors. They can have joint sensors and so on and so forth. And we can also develop good actuation mechanisms so that they do very specific things just the way that we program them to do them. And by combining these, we can come up with high fidelity, robust, real-time control methodology so that the robot is going to behave exactly the same way every single time. I said that these abilities are complementary in the sense that humans are constrained by the fact that they are imprecise. If I tell you to try and take a step that is exactly 1 meter in length, you are almost never going to be able to do that exactly right, but the robot will do that every single time if I've programmed it right. I'm also unpredictable. Every time I do that movement, I'm probably going to be differently off from that 1 meter of movement, whereas the robot is going to be very precise, do exactly the same thing over and over again. Similarly, robots are constrained because they don't have intuition of their own besides what we program into them, and they cannot really reason. For example, even a 2-year-old can see if they're stepping into a puddle and know that their foot is going to get wet, but the robot might not know that. And so the goal of my research is to understand and properly quantify these different capabilities that we have in humans and robots and to bring them together to bridge the gap between them, with the sort of overlying or overarching question being, how can we unlock synergistic potential of human-robot interaction by harnessing both human and robot capabilities? And specifically, my research does this in the area of wearable robotics for human augmentation. And with that, I want to talk about sort of the 30,000-foot idea of how we want to do this, or what that might look like, with a very specific example of our friend Bob, who has a neurological disorder or some reason why he is motor impaired and no longer able to move his upper limbs and perform activities of daily living, like putting on a hat, which requires going above your head, or bringing a cup of coffee, which requires precision to bring it to your mouth. Now, the goal of the human-robot interaction here would be to develop a wearable exoskeleton that is a functionally assistive device, something that you can wear on your body, go around the rest of your day, and then whenever you need its help, it kicks in. In order to develop a system like this, we propose to do research across 3 areas: human behavior analysis, human-aware design, and human-robot co-evolution. What these specifically entail on the human behavior analysis is modeling and predicting human behavior. So we can observe how Bob does all of these different activities, watch his behavior, collect a large data set, and from that learn to model and predict his behavior so that the exoskeleton can help him at the right time for the right task. For example, I don't want the exoskeleton to think that Bob is picking up the hat when he's actually picking up the cup of coffee and it ends up dropping the coffee on his head. Next, we want to be able to develop sensing and actuation capabilities that are unique and personalized to each individual. So we heard a lot today about personalization and how, especially in Momona's talk, for example, how individuals with disabilities have very different kinds of movement behaviors. And we want to still be able to sense and actuate towards those capabilities. And finally, we want to allow human-robot co-evolution through communication and adaptation. The example that is familiar to most people is if you buy a new phone, right? It has all the same capabilities as someone else's phone, but over time it learns your behaviors and you learn how it works and you sort of create these shortcuts and you adapt to it and it adapts to you. And that's a capability that robots can more actively leverage through personalization through AI. So that's something that I'm really interested in developing. With that, I want to give two specific examples of research that we've started in the lab, starting with an upper limb device called the Harmony exoskeleton that we're leveraging as our platform. I mentioned that this is the device that I did my PhD research with. It has since been commercialized, and we have one here at Rice. And one of the examples of how we want to use this is for self-directed therapy. So this, yeah. So this video is of someone with stroke, chronic stroke, who is using the device. And it's in a really unique control mode called mirror mode, where his left arm, so what you're seeing on the right side of the screen here, is more affected, which typically happens after stroke. You have hemiparesis. And what the robot is doing is using the movements from his right arm, so what you see on the left, to direct the movements of his left arm. And as a result of that, he is able to kind of do his own movements for his more affected side through his less affected side. And this is really powerful because now he's doing those movements on his own as opposed to the physical therapist moving his arm for him or him failing to do that movement by himself with his more impaired arm. And this is also, I don't know if you can tell, but he really enjoyed doing this control mode. And that's because he was kind of moving his own arm. And you can see the therapist is giving him targets on his left arm as opposed to his right. So this is an example of really interesting control modes and personalized control modes that we can now develop for individuals with disabilities. Another example is shown on the left here with, we want to develop telerehabilitation modalities using collaborative robots. Here I've shown the universal robot arms, which we also have in a shared lab space. And we want to be able to set up bidirectional communication between a device like the Harmony exoskeleton and these arms so that we can better control how the person's behaving on the exoskeleton side, but then also have the device itself repeat or show the person that's now controlling the device what sort of stiffness that the person has in their arm, if they have spasticity, et cetera. Just like we heard in the previous talk, these motivations for wanting to be able to convert the movements of the less affected side to the more affected side lead to unique mechanical engineering problems or controls problems like the development of this mirror mode. And so there's a lot of good synergy in the research as well. Another project that I want to highlight is that I'm interested in starting, or I'm working on starting right now, is pediatric at-home gait rehab. So the motivation for this project comes from some work that I did recently at Georgia Institute of Technology, where I was doing a postdoc, or where I was a postdoc. Here you're seeing a video game that our participant is playing, which is tracking his knee angle using IMUs. And then also on the far side, on his right knee, you can see that there's an exoskeleton, there's a motor right next to his knee. Simultaneously, the game difficulty is being adapted as this person is hitting these targets. So the idea is this is an able-bodied individual, but similarly, we have applied this with children with gait impairments to try and have them follow a more normative knee behavior, and that's whether they have hyperextension or crouch gait, which is walking with flexed knees. And they're, as Momona said, they're highly motivated because they're now playing a video game, but then they're also getting this direct feedback from the exoskeleton at the same time. And we're able to modulate that difficulty to a certain level of difficulty or a certain level of score using machine learning methods so that this is now personalized training for each individual. And this can progress over a large period of days. One of the challenges with this kind of rehabilitation, though, is it has been shown to work fairly well in the lab environment, especially for pediatric participants who have that neuronal plasticity for rehab. But it hasn't been very well extended to home environments, and so that's one of the directions that I'm really interested in pursuing. We have a couple of collaborators now from UT Health, as well as some local clinics in the Houston area. So if there are others in the room that are interested in working on this sort of project, then please reach out to me. Okay, and so just to reiterate, we have a few different platforms. I also want to mention that the treadmill and the lower limb space that is being shown here is under development, but we will have a fully functional gait lab with motion capture and force plates and so on very soon, which will be primarily an experimental space. So we plan to bring in our participants to do our experiments in there. So I'm really excited about that. And specifically, I mentioned the target populations that I've worked with before include stroke and pediatric motor impairment. That's not restricted to a specific type of prognosis, but any pediatric participants with motor impairments who are still able to walk are would be part of that study. I'm also interested in working with, I mentioned prosthesis users before. This was some of the work that I did as a postdoc as well. And I'm also really interested in looking at balance and other challenges that individuals with Parkinson's specifically face, because I think that exoskeletons could be really beneficial there. And so if you are a clinician that works with any of these populations and are interested in working on this high-level problem, please reach out. And this is just the current lab, most of whom are sitting in the back there. A couple of grad students, a couple of undergrads who are really stellar and are amazing. I'm really excited to be able to work with them.